we have been pursuing that concept of AI for the last 60 years. We have been adding technology, implementing technology, transforming our processes, have been always in our mind. How could we make this easily? How could we make this more efficiently? How could we reduce errors? And AI now accelerate this process. For the CFO now and in the future will be the one that also needs to take control on the data. That data governance is either the CFO role or the CTO, to making sure that data is audible, that we know what is have been created, how have been created, because that's really the center of where we are making those decisions.
Think about Luis? Very, very good conversation, I thought.
Yeah, he's very, very intelligent, very well versed in the financial sector. I'm very passionate about AI, and he's got a very neat book series out there as well.
Yeah, I thought he had a fascinating story, from being a technologist and a financial expert in Latin America to moving to the United States and working at Microsoft for a number of years. We had a great discussion about AI. I thought that was kind of different as well.
Definitely was. Yeah,
hey,
let's jump
Luis,
right in.
How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
Hey, Luis.
Yeah, good to see you again. Did you have a good Christmas holiday?
It was good. Thank you for asking. Appreciate it. Yeah, we got a family in town, so we got a good time together to relax and share stories.
Excellent. Well, hey, we're glad that you joined us today. We've been looking forward to talking with you.
No problem. Thank you again, and thank you for the opportunity, Robert. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. So, Tyler, take it away, man.
Definitely appreciate it. Luis, just kind of want to start off. Where are you based out of first?
I'm based in Seattle, Washington.
Washington. Seahawks fan?
Of course.
Great. Good to hear. Well, I really just want to kind of kick off the podcast by hearing your story. Kind of how you came up into the industry, kind of tell us where you started to where you are now, kind of give us the nitty gritty.
Perfect. I think my professional story started with one word, and an obsession on understanding really one word, and that word is innovation. Like really what it is, how do I get it, where is it? How could I learn it? And then eventually how to master it, how to take advantage of it, how to create that wealth through that concept of innovation. To answer that, my professional career I started business and finance at college. And one of my first careers, I worked for Arthur Andersen, the consulting company back at that time. And my work was on digital transformation. That was the buzzword. That was the buzzword in the 90s or the 2000s. And I did that work across Latin America. It was basically helping organizations modernize their core processes, their financial controls, the operational models and environment that they were even at this point, legacy models. They were constantly new technology changing. We had the year 2000 issue that was pretty funny or pretty significant at that time. And there was also, the same as now, a lot of regulatory pressure to understand and make sure that those companies were in compliance. So as part of that experience, I quickly learned that transformation is not just about systems. No, it's about culture, it's about trust, it's about governance, and it's about leadership alignment. No, especially in regions where there's a lot of volatility in the currency, in the scales, in politics, and regulatory changes, and it's a part of the day-to-day. How to be flexible on that type of environment. So I saw how weak processes and fragmented data could undermine other areas of the company that were strong. and quickly learned how important was to have financial discipline and a strong operational foundations, to unlock growth. At that point, kind of a learning was okay. So innovation is a necessity for survival, for efficiency, and kind of at that, some of those learnings through innovation, I ran across the concept also of order to cash. In order to cash is the view of a company as an end-to-end process. It's all the way from you get the order at the beginning, you start talking to the customers, or that's marketing sentiments or signals that you get, all the way to the end, patterns to fulfillment, production, supply chain, that you deliver, get the product or the service to the customer, and you get the cash from the customer. And when we say you get the cash, is all the corporate finance or financial activities that need to happen also to close the books in a way that is efficient, compliant, and auditable. And really, that order to cash was kind of the first glances on this is where innovation exists. Innovation, as what I understand now, is not only at the product, it's not only at the service itself. Innovation drives the margin, the differentiation across that experience, across that order to cash process. And this is kind of what is part of the book, that the series that I have. The series is the AI powered order to cash. Because also when we think about AI, is that not only automation, kind of what I mentioned on my experience at the beginning, but now it's about embedding intelligence. Embedding intelligence where? Embedding intelligence across your company, because all your company is the one that is going to start driving that margin, that differentiation, that experience, that is the one that your customer will say, this is why I want to buy this product. This is why I want to buy this service. And as you inject that intelligence, prices, they don't become static. Your price becomes dynamic. The discounts from the sales team, they're intentional. They are not reactive to close. Your contracts are optimized. There is no revenue leakage. There is no revenue recognition issues, or there is no collection issues. That they're predictable, So at the end, you reduce that complexity, and you reduce that manual activity, you reduce errors, and everything becomes more connected, automated, and governed. From Arthur Andersen, I moved to the United States. I did my master's in UC Berkeley, and my job continued, not only now on that digital transformation, but it was more on how to take these companies from this mom and pop company, what we call it pre-IPOs, to institutions, to become corporations, to become entities that they can be part of the Wall Street. That means governance. That means clear processes, clear responsibility. That means governance as a structure. And from there, I moved to Microsoft, in which continue with these transformation activities. I work in one of the major changes in Microsoft, innovation through the order to cash processes. And this was a project on the volume licenses system. It was a $50 billion per year, over 100 countries involved, over 35 different languages that we needed to touch. And everything is about understanding the complexity and the specific of each of those countries in order to have the right invoice, the right trade, the right taxation, international or U.S. revenue recognition, and making sure that as we move into that intelligence into the system to please the customer, to drive innovation, to create or improve our margins, either through efficiency or bringing more features in order to increase the experience, we don't break the bank in terms of investment, or we don't break the bank in terms of the financial integrity that we needed to have at the end of implementing implementing that process. You need to have a background. So my background from college kind of give me that first step on, okay, I think I can take a job on some financial and administrative type of activities. My work with Arthur Andersen get me that process lenses, process continuity, and seeing a company as a streamline, as processes across organization. My work with the MBA gives me that strategic view of we're not implementing technology. We're implementing experiences. We're implementing efficiency. And at the same time, seeing the human touch as what we are doing. Not technology for the sake of technology, but technology for the sake of better experiences, driving, embedding intelligence, or increasing that differentiation from company to company. Through the implementation in Microsoft, I brought hey, this is what we do. This is the best practices from Arthur Andersen. Let me tell you guys what we can do. But it was a completely different scale,
Yes.
Way bigger than what I have ever experienced. But through the mentors that I have in Microsoft and through those 2-3 years, was a long implementation. It was long because of the number of features. It was long also because you are adding more customers through the pipe. You are adding over 50 products needed to be added. And when we said products, each product has different monetization capabilities. Some goes with the L, so you buy the license. Other goes as a subscription. So it's a completely different revenue recognition and activity. And even then you go into services when we talk about Azure, when we talk about AI. So little by little you start adding that complexity. And as you add that complexity, you need to make sure that you don't break what you have done before, but everything is streamlined, and at the same time the key features are still being ready and in that governance. And through that is how I from a draft of that governance methodology, I was able to create even I would call it a live governance model, because it's just a foundation, but it's a strong guidelines that can be used and applied for major IT implementations. Definitely for implementations that are not as complex, have to be reviewed. Potentially could be too many steps. But when we talk about billions of dollars at stake, very important to make sure you have the right governance. That at the end, we need to think about that governance, those controls, those policies, exit to market, the go, no go. It's part of that foundation that will allow you to innovate and innovate faster. But how could you innovate faster when you have all those controls? Because if you need to go back and restate 6 months of work, or you need to go back and review all that software or potentially what you have purchased or rent on infrastructure and it's not ready, then really having the right governance is really an agile process that is not going to break you the bank. So it's that insurance that help you move faster with this complexity for this major company.
And now with AI coming into as a major trend, I'm curious how you see AI transforming the finance industry.
No, excellent point. AI is an accelerator. We have been pursuing that concept of AI for the last 60 years. We have been adding technology, implementing technology, transforming our processes, have been always in our mind how could we make this easily, how could we make this more efficiently, how could we reduce errors. And AI now accelerate this process. I would say accelerate it in two areas. One is we can embed it easily than what it used to be in the past. And I go back to this concept of easiness. And the second one is we can embed AI not only with that objective that we have in the past to make this efficiently, but now we can embed intelligence. And that's really the new capability that we inject in AI, the intelligence. Intelligence comes from two sources. We can go and ask AI to understand what is happening in the world, and we're gonna research hundreds of thousands of web pages and have some understanding. Hey, this is kind of what I understand based on your product internally, and is asking AI in the order to catch what are those signals, what are the customers saying, and how could I, and those are the questions, how could I, those are the leaders that we need to have in the future. Leaders that don't chase AI for the sake of AI, but they chase judgment, and judgment on asking the right question in order to drive innovation, in order to drive change, in order to drive better experiences, in order to drive those products and services. So AI is that enabler to accelerate, enabler to bring that intelligence. And what I think about AI too is that in this concept of easiness, as AI becomes faster, as AI becomes easier to embed into our process, into our systems, as AI and subscriptions get moved into more industries, the entry barriers to any industries are going to be lower. As the entry barriers get lower, I think what AI will enable in the future is more entrepreneurs. And I think that's the key of how we need to think about AI. I think that's why it's important that we continue learning about business, about products, about innovation, in order to see the company as an end-to-end, because in the future, single people entrepreneurs with multiple companies, that will be some of the things that we're going to be seeing more and more.
That's great, Luis. I heard you mention, we have been using AI in some form for 60 years, which is very, very accurate. How have you personally seen the rise of AI from when you started, whether that was in the 90s, 80s, whatever, to now where you have ChatGPT and everybody's got access to it in their pockets? Kind of, seen that continue to grow over the years and really exponentially here in the last 5 or 6.
Yeah, I think for ChatGPT is definitely a great platform, and is that platform that allow us to see what is the next generation of our Google, the generation of our search. There will be other AI, more specific embedded intelligence as we talk about financial systems, as we talk about marketing, as we talk about creation of content, either on the form of video, in the form of music. But it will be important that this continues. Even at this point, when I work on ChatGPT in order to research about financial integrity, when I ask ChatGPT, hey, I would like to understand or create a framework or a matrix to automate the financials and making sure that I create a financial integrity matrix, kind of when I put together revenue recognition, control, audit, AI, taxes. How could I create that matrix in a one-way automated? ChatGPT takes a minute or more in order to create a matrix. It's fascinating because now at least I can have some sort of starting point, that it helped me continue with my idea. But we are still, I would say, years away from really have what is, from my perspective, ultimate AI. I would call it either chief of staff or assistant, in which I can eventually, I don't need to type it. I can even talk in, or it can even recognize my mental thinking and start giving me some of those answers in a second. We are not there yet from the personal standpoint. From when we talk about enterprises, and enterprises, they need to search for hundreds of thousands of data. It will be also energy consuming. There will be latency on some of those answers, but it's definitely way better than what we are used to be. So that intelligence, that answer is definitely help us to move faster, to make decisions faster with the right technology, but at the same time, we are not there yet. We have the opportunity still to become and to be more productive on both sides, personal side and enterprise.
Definitely. Another question I have for you. One big issue with the current AI models is the lack of security protections for personal information. Very cautious on what you put into ChatGPT because a lot of times those models will use your data to train future models, or like financial apps or anything that you could use where you would have PII information in there or financial information that should not be shared publicly. It's hard to keep that secured behind these AI models. Do you have any recommendations or guidance on how to ensure we can use these models, or even the tools that you might utilize now that are taking the right steps to protect PII?
Excellent question, and definitely is a very critical and important problem to address. No, we go back to governance. When we have especially pre-IPO small companies and they want to start becoming a little more intelligent and start using ChatGPT, that lack of internal processes is kind of your example. No, they will start adding their private financial information, employees' information in order to get some specific answer, but they are using it in the public domain. So that governance, again, is critical. Very difficult sometimes to have those lenses, but that's kind of the purpose of my book is to understand really how we're using that proprietary information, where do we use, how to protect it, and how to have those lenses. ChatGPT eventually might need to evolve into that and create those boundaries for small companies, mid-sized companies that they may lack that governance or they may lack that concept of privacy in order to make them aware to the users that there are environments that they could use that where the data could be protected, and there are other environments that are publicly available, and that information that still need to be more publicly aware. At the end, when we talk about AI, when we talk about order to cash, the value is in the data. Maybe we have heard it hundreds of times, but some people don't understand why. Where is the value of the data? Garbage in is garbage out, and that data has no value. If you don't have a governance in where you have who input that data, who was that customer, from which territory, which product they're purchased, at what price, what happened with that promotion, how many people were willing to accept that service, 3 days, 5 days, 9 days, is garbage in. You cannot do nothing with that data. So that governance of having the data across the supply chain will give marketing the data to understand sentiments and signals pre-order. We give finance the data to understand if the forecast that they have for the next 3 years is valid or not, because we are seeing that the people are not willing to purchase that product or service at that price point because there are already competitors in that land. So data, by the sake of data, have no value, but data in a way that is constructive, that knows where was created, who created, and is auditable. That's the data that is important for AI. That's the data that creates intelligence into the company. And that's the data that will take the company to create that innovation that we have been talking about. And that's the very important decision when we talk about the value of AI. When I go and work on financial transformations, the first question that I ask is, how is the data? Do you believe in your data? If the answer is no, I'm wasting my time.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies have to do projects to clean up their data first and get a gold copy of that data in order to really make sure that their AI models even work properly. If they don't make those investments to actually create that gold copy of the data, and of course, it's It's always changing, of course, but that whole process of cleaning the data and reformatting it in a way that's usable is really key. And I think that's why we're starting to see a lot more about in the area of data science popularity.
That is correct. That is correct. When AI is applied responsibly, the correct data, it has the power to reconcile that speed and the control. No, it allows the organization to scale and scale intelligently without that chaos of data that doesn't really make sense when we run those queries. And it's grounded on strong processes in data and government, no? And that governance by design, and that's kind of an important concept. And again, that experience was kind of that helped me or infused me to say, hey, let's get that experience and let's put it on paper and on the concept of order to cash, but on the AI power. So when we have an institution, a corporation that is infusing AI, how do that order to cash processes work from the methodology standpoint? So the first book is on is on digital transformation versus AI. So I create that shift from technologies. The second one is the methodology on how to implement GRF, so the governance. And the third one, even though my background is in finance, even from the finance standpoint, I need to make decision about pricing. I need to make decision about who do I give credit or not, who are my customers, and I need to make decision on promotions, the CLD, so that customers that have the highest level on purchases. And that is kind of my third book is on AI, on customer, on that strategic vision of the customers and on the marketing side. You know? The fourth book, which is the one that I'm working right now, is on data governance. I needed to make sure I emphasize this concept that is very important. It's data governance and financial integrity, you know, and that would be my first book. But at the end, it's a series. I want to cover all order to cash processes, and at the end, have a blueprint and a matrix of how we can create Uber matrix and Uber process in which is autonomous, and you have one person managing that enterprise, and your chief of staff, your AI, is helping you make decisions. That's judgment that we're talking about. That in order to drive that company.
Let's talk specifically to entrepreneurs here for a minute. You mentioned, which I completely agree with, that AI is empowering a lot of new entrepreneurs, and it's only seeming to grow year over year. Both Bob and myself are entrepreneurs. Do you have any best practices that you recommend from your line of work for the data aspect, as far as keeping the data, keeping good data, making sure it's secure, etc.? Do you have any best practices, recommendations, or tools, anything you could recommend to entrepreneurs?
When talking to entrepreneurs, it's challenging. It's challenging because I have seen entrepreneurs that they have not invested time on pursuing college education or master education, and there are a few cases that there are successful entrepreneurs, no? But I would say for entrepreneurs, before even jumping into AI, you need to have the foundation. You need to understand how to manage cash. You need to understand what means investment. You need to understand what is ROI. You need to understand how to target customers. You need to understand what are the different avenues to target customers. Right now, potentially Generation C is all about online, but there are other products potentially you want to target 40s or even higher that you may need to use other channels. So first advice is making sure you have that foundation, you have that education. From entrepreneurs, I think they will have something that even other scholars do not have, which is that can-do attitude and perseverance and resilience. And I think for that is just go for it. Just go for it. Keep learning and making sure that what you learn, how you failed, you are back up and you don't do it again. And in that learning is, let's make sure you use the latest the latest technologies available to become more productive. And in this case, right now, is AI. And AI from the ChatGPT, which is kind of a more on creation of documents or research, and we need to research other tools depending on that area that they might be working on. Content creation or movies, or even I have some friends that they are creating music right now using AI, and there are other specific tools for that. That concept of learning and learning by, I think that's something that starts at the college, starts at the master, but it's something that it has to be part of our DNA, that we got to continue learning. We got to continue, especially in this case, from the people around my age, it's transforming, because what we learned in the past about digital transformation, some of those concepts are no longer the correct ones. So we need to unlearn some concepts that are not the correct ones at this point, and learn the new ones. We have new technologies that have other principles, like in the case of AI.
Where do you see AI in 3 to 5 years?
No, excellent point. And you have a very interesting question about leadership and about overcoming challenges. There was let me jump into that. It's a very interesting story, and then I go into the healthcare, which I think is an interesting way of viewing how healthcare may change. No, so as part of and I mentioned this to Robert in our previous call. As part of the COVID-19, the pandemic. This has nothing to do with the financial transformation. This is a little different. But I had an urgent call from the President of the Congress of the Republic of Peru. The country at that point was standstill. The physical sessions and Congress were impossible, as nobody was moving out of their houses, and without parliament working, democracy, the democratic government itself was at risk. They were in need to passing laws in order to move the country, to pay checks, to pay institutions, to make sure the country was running for the pandemic, in order to make sure they overcome the pandemic, and also to make sure that they continue that responsibility. The request basically was simple, no? They needed to accelerate critical feature that they needed on Microsoft Teams in order to enable the parliament to operate remotely. Basically, in order for the Congress people to vote online. But this is, in reality, it wasn't a technology request. It was a democracy request. And at that moment, leadership for me took a different meaning. No, there was no playbook. There was no precedence. There was no margin for delay. And the question wasn't, can this be done? The question was, how fast can we do this responsibly? Really responsibly was fast and responsive. The stakes were enormous, and the future has to work securely, reliable, and at scale under that global scrutiny from multiple institutions. And it's because the legitimacy of democracy depends on that answer. So there was no room for experimentation, no room for failure, no room for ambiguity. And that moment reinforced for me that is something that I carry deeply today, that technology is never neutral at a scale. When platforms become a civic infrastructure, leadership must extend beyond business outcomes to see that impact on the society. And this experience really reshaped how I think about AI, how I think about platforms, how I think about governance. No, it underscores readiness or ethics or accountability, and accountability cannot be an afterthought. When systems underpin democracy or healthcare, we'll go in a second, or public trust, failure is not an option. Without responsibility is dangerous. That's kind of one of the key concepts about, again, governance, no? And that moment also clarified my leadership philosophy about, in a very human way, no? True leadership is about understanding what is at stake, not just what is being built, It's about knowing when to accelerate and where to elevate decisions beyond organizational boundaries, no? And key concept here for me on leadership is about stewardship. That's kind of what I learned about that experience, you know. And this is kind of something that really shaped the way I'm thinking. I think I mentioned a little bit about moving from Peru, from Arthur Andersen to do my MBA, and really thinking about the big picture. We're not talking about technology. Really, what is the big picture? And when we talk about the government, again, this is not about platforms. This is about democracy. This is about stewardship. You know, so making sure we have that in mind is very important when we manage those transformations.
Can you think about a leader that had a profound impact upon your career? What did he or she say to you that had that impact?
Excellent question. I think one of the most profound leaders in my career came from my early years in Arthur Andersen, and he was one of the partners from Arthur Andersen. At that point, coming out of college, I had some pre-ideas about what needed to be done, pre-concept about enterprises, processes, technology, and I think the way that not only he was a boss, but he was a mentor, but I was really a human mentor that really I could trust. I could open up and say, I don't understand. Help me understand why you are thinking in that way, or help me understand the big picture about transformation. Even in some of those cases, the transformation and the efficiency that we were seeking were profound outcomes on people. And he was the one from his leadership position that challenged me to think about how could we retrain those people? How do we make sure that we re-enter those people into the global force? And that human touch with, at the same time, that high level view on why we are doing that. So the true meaning of transformation, that is really how we make the human life better without really sacrificing some people that have been working on that. I think that really changed my way of thinking.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for sharing that story. So I interrupted you, and you were about to go back down with I think, to answer Tyler's question about the future of AI.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, thank you, Robert. And Tyler, maybe with an example, no? And that example about healthcare. I received a call maybe over a year ago from one of the regional presidents. Again, this is in Peru. He said, "Hey, we just got $50 million that we would like to invest on a new hospital in this location in Peru. But I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing for the citizens. Could I invest in this major infrastructure, or what are other options that we have?" And I think that's the power, and that's the positive things that we can have on AI. And again, where is AI evolution into this? If we have the right model on AI, we can take a $50 million, $100 million investment on brick and mortar to serve maybe 200 patients per day, or we can use that $100 million investment and we can serve 10,000, 50,000 patients per day. And that's really the difference, It's exponentially the outcome, 20 times more outcome. And when we talk about health, we talk about care, we talk about human life, we talk about really be responsible for the health of those people. And what did that mean? It means that if we have a partnership between nurses and AI, in which working together, we can get all the data from the patients, their history, where they're coming from. They are working together in a way that we add the data, right data, right? Not garbage in, garbage out data, the right data. Then we can streamline that process. In some cases, based on the healthcare studies, almost 50% of the cases when people are going to the hospital, when people are making phone calls to the nurses, almost 50% of the cases, they can resolve that issue over the phone. So sometimes are just queries, sometimes are issues that they do not need that intervention or that emergency or that intervention from the doctor. So we can do that over the phone, over the platform, in that partnership between AI and nurses, in which AI recognize who is calling, who is the patient, what history they have, how many calls they have done. They know that they're taking Tylenol 3 times a day or 5 times a day. They know that they have an injury in this part of the body. And then from there, retaliate, create some Q&As and give an answer that comfort the patient or pass it through the nurse. Then we have a healthcare system that is way more efficient than what we can have. In countries outside of the United States, in which there are no highways and there is no way to reach, small communities that in some cases they speak even different languages. For example, in Peru, there are more than 100 different languages. How could you have a nurse or a doctor to talk about in over 100 languages when you have, an issue with your heart? That's the value of AI, because right now I can pick up the phone, I speak in Spanish or in English, and then on the other side, the other person is listening in Quechua, which is their modern language. I say, okay, yes, perfect, yeah, I understand you. Excellent. And this is AI helping us cross those boundaries and really make those investments more efficient on the healthcare. So on the healthcare, I think in the future, we will see more AI working together with nurses, working together with doctors, in which we're going to be able to provide, for the first time in hundreds of countries outside of the United States, the first time they're going to be able to talk to somebody with have some answers on their health. And at the same time, we're going to have nurses to be more efficient with their time, doctors to have the data in order to make better decisions for some of those patients, without the need to start investing in brick and mortar, but more on those digital technologies so we can close that gap on health.
Fascinating. Yeah, I do think that that the language translation is amazing. I'm just starting, been 1 year into learning Spanish, Luis.
Very good.
And I hope to someday speak Spanish as well as you speak English. It's amazing, actually, what you're doing. But I felt that AI has been helping me accelerate my learnings, because I can have a conversation, and then, it can even correct my pronunciation, which I get wrong a lot. It's really amazing. So what career advice would you give to someone who's just starting out and, is aspiring to be a technology leader?
I think it's important to create a base, no? College for the sake of college is not good, but we need to make sure that they start working on their professional career with that maturity and understanding on the value of education, because the value of education is equal to the value of education in new technologies, in this case, the technology of AI. We need to have that ground is very important. You will never know where your life is going to take you. I have investments in real estate. I have investment in education. I work for technology companies. I have friends that come to me for business advice. I have friends that come to me to invest with them in other areas. And that's part of our nature. Without having that basic understanding on industries, on P&L, on cost and profit, basic understanding on what is a supply chain, what are the options for marketing, it's going to be very difficult to, as they move forward in their career, keep challenging themselves on new concepts because there is no foundation and there is not a strong beginning. So foundation is key. And as they move from that foundation, I would say we're in a world in which, for good or for bad, and that's another concept. AI, unfortunately, might divide us. No, might divide us because it's such a strong or efficient accelerating technology that the ones who will use it will be exponentially ahead to the ones that are not using it. Tyler, you mentioned about ChatGPT, the growth on ChatGPT, the growth on how can we extract information. Eventually, some of the tools that right now are being created on the side, on the videos, on the music. ChatGPT may even have all of those immersed as they continue with that learning and efficiency. But the ones who are not connected digitally, where do they stand? How do they create a company that efficient and haven't even had the opportunity to get connected? So the has with the has not will be tremendous. And the has not only will be able to take advantage of the latest technology, but they're going to be creating companies. Let's see the case of Elon Musk, no? CEO of 3 major companies. In the future, there will be those has with 4, 5, 6 companies that are using AI to manage their daily routine while they are creating new products, new services, or they are researching about new trends and new technologies. And they have not. They are still the ones that are going to be thinking about, where could I start? What is the opportunity? Where could I get a job? While the has are already thinking about those margins, what is the next innovation? And that will be very important. So education, it will be key, and I think the role of government to close that gap will be very, very important. That gap is getting bigger and bigger as we've seen it.
Luis, you mentioned your book a few times. Would you mind kind of giving us a little bit of an overview of the series and what readers can expect from checking it out?
Thank you. So the book series, AI Powered Order to Cash, the objective is to provide understanding on the capabilities of AI across the order to cash. No, the first book is about efficiency and operational excellence as we move from digital transformation to AI, embedded AI intelligence. And the second book is the GRF, the governance, which is now that we are on AI, how could we implement, how to embed AI in a controlled way in which data is the correct one, we have the right data, not garbage in, garbage out, and how to manage a project, and in this case, even a complex project on technology to make sure we check the boxes in an agile way. The third book, and the book from 3 to 9, will be specific examples about how to embed AI across the order to cash. The third book, which is Marketing and Customer Insight, is about how do we create that intelligence, how to have the right data and where to bring that data in order to have the right marketing campaigns, how to create and innovate on products, and how that data that is created from our customer, from our partners, can be used also at the end by the corporate functions in order to have financial integrity, the right forecast, and eventually start embedded intelligence. The fourth book, which is the one that I'm working right now, is data governance. I think I wanted to make sure that as we move into this area of AI, some roles will need to change. The role for the CFO now and in the future will be the one that also needs to take control on the data. Data governance is either the CFO role or the CTO to making sure that data is audible, that we know what is have been created, how have been created, because that's really the center of where we are making those decisions. And as we move into that trend of autonomous enterprises, which is kind of what it is through the digital transformation all the way through where we are making our companies little by little more autonomous. Data is the key because that's where our intelligence system will use in order to provide us information for us to make that judgment, to make that decision. So if we have garbage in, we're going to do a garbage out decision. So that data governance and financial integrity is the fourth book. The fifth to the ninth, I'm going to be talking about supply chain, production, culture, which I think that's another shift that we have with AI, and how important it is to have our employees to keep learning on technology. We are in this speed of efficiency. So not only Office tools, but any other ERP systems, as we embed intelligence, we need to make sure that our employees are fully vetted and they keep training on those tools. And having that role of their boss, as we are changing those roles because now they need to continue learning, we need managers who become mentors, that they allow employees to experiment with data, experiment with new process, fail fast as they create innovation, as they use that intelligence into that order to cash. Now, culture will be very important. And then at the end, on the series, it's going to be 10 books. I'm going to be finalizing with a framework that still working on, and eventually how to create that unified autonomous company in which we have processes, governance, and financial integrity embedded into that order to cash. And what are the layers from the technology standpoint in which we can create that, entry the data, and how the decisions are made in order to have financial integrity, in order to have decisions from the marketing standpoint, supply chain, warehousing, et cetera, no? Embedded into one. We hope we will have those entrepreneurs in the future managing eventually more than one enterprise with their AI as a chief of staff.
Very, very good. And what's the best way for people to get a hold of you, Luis?
I think at this point, the best way will be through LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Luis Ferreira Coello, and just send me a message. And if they're interested in my books, they can go to Amazon, either search by my name or AI powered order to cash, and more than welcome to correspond and see what can we do together. Thank you, Tyler.
Well, it's been great having you on. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day. It's been very insightful.
No, definitely. Thank you again, Tyler, Robert. I appreciate the time, Robert and Tyler, for this.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your wisdom. So much appreciated.
Definitely. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Robert.
Me, Luis.
Talk to you guys soon. Thank you.